We are less than 1 week away from the start of the 2026 college football season. 6 days to be exact. And the team that played for a national championship last year just lost over 120 combined starts on their offensive line. Not to mention, they got to replace 20-plus sacks on their defensive front as well. And I still think they're a playoff team, and that is where we are starting today. No other than the Miami Hurricanes in the ACC. The ACC is Miami and a prayer. That's just one man's opinion. But what about the Big 12? Big 12's got a collection of talent, maybe 4 or 5 teams that could push for college football playoff consideration. Well, today we're going to talk about 2 of them, Texas Tech and BYU. And after today's episode, you'll have the ACC, the Big 12, the Big 10, and the SEC college football playoff contender episodes all in one place. And that's right here on Coop's Corner. What's up, guys? I'm Cooper Patagna. Welcome in to episode 3 of Coop's Corner in 2026. We've got a fantastic lineup for you today. And here's what's on the menu. I mentioned ACC contenders, starting with Miami, no doubt the most talented team in the league, but we address what the biggest question mark is preventing Miami from going to back-to-back playoffs. We'll also talk about the Big 12. You look around, and it's probably the most open Power 4 conference, just in terms of contenders, than any other league. So we'll talk about the Big 12. I mentioned those 2 teams. And then we'll also get into the mailbag, which we're going to bring into the halfway point, and we'll also answer that question that I did not answer last week from H&J Tiger, who wanted to know who is the next Drew Mestemaker, the next Group of 6 quarterback to make the Power 4 jump. I'll give you all those answers and more, but first, a message from our sponsors, Bruno & Bruno Law Firm in New Orleans. From personal injury to medical malpractice, Bruno & Bruno Law Firm in New Orleans has recovered millions for their clients, and they treat you like family because that is what they are. Call Bruno & Bruno today or visit BrunoBrunoLaw.com and be sure to tell them Cooper sent you. Clap it up. I got through the intro. That's the hardest part. Little bit scripted, little bit ad-libbed. Juicers are flowing and we're fired up. I'm not going to bury the lead. I said that we were going to talk Miami, and that's exactly what we're going to do. In Miami, to me, I said it, most talent in the conference, and they're starting to run away with it. There's a little bit more and more separation year over year over year in the ACC. But the 2 units that Mario Cristobal won 13 games with last year, it's a lot of new faces. And Mario Cristobal, he's a hunter, and his bloodhounds are gone. CeCe Mawanoa, gone. Markel Bell, gone. Inez Cooper, gone. James Brockermeyer, gone. Ruben Bain, dog, gone. Akeem Messidor, gone. So what now? All right, now evaluating Miami Hurricanes and having a little bit of fun with it as well. Let's set the table for the Miami Hurricanes by taking one step back and looking at their 2025 season, 13-3. I mentioned it, and we hit a little bit of turbulence after a smooth start for Miami, a 5-0 start, beating teams like Notre Dame 27-24. The head-to-head they had to have against the Fighting Irish to get into the playoffs. Also, they beat Florida. They beat Florida State. They drop 2 out of the next 3 to Louisville and SMU, then win their next 4 by an average of 27.5 points, and then go down to College Station after getting an at-large bid and stifle Mike Elko and Marcel Reed, overwhelm Ohio State, the defending national champions, in the Cotton Bowl. And then Carson Beck, when you need him the most, a game-winning drive against Trinidad Chambliss and Pete Golding to make it all the way to the national championship. Guess where? In Miami. And this time, they met their match in the team of destiny and Fernando Mendoza in Indiana and Kurt Signetti. They lose by 6, but their first title run since 2003, and Miami Hurricane fans have been waiting for this for a long time. It's year 5 of Mario Cristobal. There's been incremental progress year over year over year. Miami's arrived. They're here now. And now we believe that Miami is the team to beat in the ACC. Looks like that in the short term, and until anything changes in a major way, it's probably going to be like that in the long term. But let's evaluate this 2026 team, and we're going to do that using Coop's 5 prongs of a college football playoff contender. I know, punny. Talent composition, that's 1. Experience, that's 2. The trenches, that's 3. We saw that come up big last year for both Miami and Indiana. Coaching continuity, that's a 4th. And then 5th, this is the line of demarcation. Are you in? Are you out? Comes down to the schedule. That helps as well. That's part of the deal as well. So I mentioned it. Talent composition. It's not a coincidence. It's number 1 for me, and it's number 1 for Mario Cristobal, the guy that I used to work for at Oregon. He wakes up, and I can tell you the first thing that he thinks of when his feet hit the ground is get dudes. That is what he thinks of. I know it sounds corny, but that's how his brain was wired. We used to have this big old list of about maybe 150 to 200 players that he wanted to text every morning. And I was like, man, this guy's absolutely relentless. And he's a dog that way, man. That's how he recruits. That's how he builds his roster. That's why Miami, what it is at this point. But let me tell you this. Out of the last 5 recruiting cycles, Miami has not finished outside of the top 15. 3 of those classes came in the top 10. The portal, the last 2 years, Miami's finished in the top 5. Not to mention, the Canes only had 13 commits via the transfer portal, which tells me the fusion of high school talent and transfer portal talent, when you're only taking 13 guys, is exactly where you want it to be. That's where it should be for a national championship contender. So, in terms of the prestige for Miami, when it comes to talent composition, some of the best in the country, some of the best financial resources in the country. They're the most committed, not only in the ACC, but head-to-head against Oregon, teams like Texas, LSU. Miami's a team that can throw down the gauntlet. We've certainly seen that, and I don't expect them to hurt for quite some time. All right, experience-wise, here's if you're looking at Miami, where you're going to say, okay, maybe it clouds the picture a little bit, but it ties back into that talent composition. 14 departures, 9 of those guys are going to the NFL, 7 on offense, 7 on defense, right? Seems like a lot, and it is a lot. So let's start on the offensive line. For Mario Cristobal, Alex Mirabal, for anybody that's ever played at Miami, the DNA is right there on both sides of the line of scrimmage. And you look at this team last year, they were middle of the pack in terms of running the football. And that's with guys like Mawanoa and Markel Bell and Inez Cooper. I mean, this line averaged around 6'6" and 330 pounds, and yet they found another gear in the CFP where Mark Fletcher averaged over 126 yards per game and rushed for over 500 yards in 4 games. Now, the question is for me, you're about an inch smaller, you're about 7 pounds lighter, you got a freshman that you're probably going to plug in and play between Congdon or Cantwell at right guard. Jacob Rodriguez has missed 25 games. That's your projected center. There's been an injury problem there. Okunlola, who will more than likely be your left tackle, is a guy that's been cross-trained and played primarily at left guard. McCoy, who's a guy that's played at right guard, is going to be kicked out to tackle. So that's a little bit inverse in terms of the typical philosophy we see at the college football level of tackles typically going inside to guard, not guards going outside to tackles. That being said, Okunlola was recruited as a 5-star offensive tackle. The traits, the length are obviously there. And McCoy as well, I think, is certainly a guy that's going to end up playing well at the right tackle position. The left guard spot, as of right now, I believe that spot is S.J. Alifatuli. Now, I expect there to be competition throughout the year. To me, if I'm looking at a spot that's a little bit worrisome, or I'm going to watch and examine throughout the year, it's going to be Alifatuli. And here's the thing, we'll get in the schedule later, they got time to gel. That's the good thing. On the defensive side of the ball for Miami, this team last year had 50 sacks. 50. That is number 1 in the country. Ruben Bain Jr., Akeem Messidor, they had a lot of guys, Marquise Lightfoot, that could get after the quarterback. And ultimately, when it got time to really kind of squeeze your opponent in the top tier ones, A&M, Ohio State, Ole Miss, that defensive line, that front 7 took over. So with Bain and Messidor gone, who's going to step up? The good thing for Miami, if you look at Miami's 2 deep, that's 8 guys. on that defensive line and that edge spot. 4 of those guys are 5 stars. The other 3 were top 200 players. And the other one, who I hadn't talked about, is Ahmad Moten, who I had as a first-round draft pick projected in the 2027 NFL Draft for CBS Sports. If you haven't seen that, there's a plug for you. Go check it out. So Miami, in terms of their front 7 depth, and especially all the way back, working back to the second, third level, I don't really expect anything to fall off for Corey Heatherman and his defense, which was one of the best in the country's offensive line. We're examining, and that's where, we're going to keep a close eye throughout the year. All right, the fourth one, coaching continuity. I bring this up. This is really big to me, and this is really big to Miami as well when you're shuffling a lot of pieces and you got a new faces. But Shannon Dawson's back, and Shannon Dawson's back with his 3rd transfer portal quarterback in 3 years. The first one was Cam Ward, and man, Cam Ward was awesome. It just could do everything you wanted. I would say the thing that stood out about Cam Ward was the ability just to create magic consistently. The arm angles, I would say the athleticism was really underrated in the pocket, the ability to extend plays. He was a ton of fun. He was electricity bottled up at the quarterback position, but he had to shoulder a lot of it as well. And the next year was Carson Beck, a little bit more balanced guy, is traditional pocket passer, but fit, was a really good distributor, stepped up when his team needed him to. But the guy out of those 3 that I think fits the best, if you were going to compare, would be Darian Mensah in this collegiate system for Shannon Dawson. When you think about this player, you think of a calm, cool, collected, precision, accuracy, battle-tested from the group of 6 to Duke, helping Duke win their first ACC outright championship in a very, very long time. Darian Mensah was the guy that helped elevate his team. And I'll tell you this right now, Miami fans are probably going to get a big chuckle out of this. I don't know, I had him a top 25 transfer portal player. He's been a guy for me that's been really difficult to figure out because you're trying to mesh the NFL projection along with the production that he's going to have at the collegiate level. I was too low. I'm very excited about this kid, very excited about the fit in Miami and Shannon Dawson's offense. On the flip side, Corey Heatherman, I will say this, the best hire Mario Cristobal has ever made. Talk about the impact that this guy's had on that defense. If you think about that 2024 Cam Ward season, Miami couldn't stop anybody. That's what it felt like. Corey Heatherman comes in. He gets the best out of this group. You talk about unleashing the dogs on that defensive line. That's exactly what he did. Most of the secondary comes back. Xavier Lucas, Damari Brown, Ethan O'Connor, Zachary Poyser. There's a lot of guys there and a lot of talent that Heatherman and Will Harris should get a lot of credit for. So Miami and Corey Heatherman and Shannon Dawson, this is exactly what you want. When it's close but no cigar, you want to be able to keep the nucleus together, especially when you feel like you're improving the talent year over year. Now, the last one is schedule. We mentioned this. And if you look at Miami's schedule, as of right now, there's only one preseason top 25 ranked opponent. That is Notre Dame. And Notre Dame's looking to avenge that game that they lost to Miami in Coral Gables last year. And this one, it's in South Bend. Outside of Notre Dame, it's a pretty cake schedule. I think it ranks 45th in ESPN's FPI. And if you're Miami, from both a 2026 standpoint and beyond, this is what it should look like in the ACC. It should look like domination. It should look at what we saw at times last year. And Miami is a team that certainly has the great capability to put a lot of distance between them and the rest of the pack in the ACC. So that schedule, pretty lenient for Miami. Notre Dame, that's a game that you have circled. But the one thing that I will say, if you drop the head-to-head against Notre Dame and you drop another ACC game, that schedule is not littered with good wins. So now you're going to have to win the ACC championship outright to get a playoff bid. So Miami there, what I will say, like I said, this is a team built for the college football NIL era. And 3 names that I really want to talk about. I talked about Darian Mensah. He's one of them. But Mark Fletcher, I brought that name up, and I talked about him averaging over 120 yards. I talked about him really kind of being the catalyst and the identity for this Miami team down the stretch in that college football playoff run. With a whole new offensive line, really outside of one guy. It's going to be this running game that Miami's going to have to look to that's going to be more consistent in what we saw in the CFP run than what we saw in the season, that they're going to have to play to an ability that this doesn't turn into a 2024 pass-happy Miami team where it's all on the shoulders of Darian Mensah like it was for Cam Ward. It cannot be that way. And I think Miami's in a lot better spot from an offensive line standpoint, but they got to be able to run the football. And the catalyst for that, the tip of the spear, is going to be Mark Fletcher. And that guy plays north-south. He runs behind his pads. It's exactly the guy Mario Cristobal wants to lean in on. The last guy that I want to talk about is Damon Wilson. Comes over from Missouri, one of the most highly touted transfers in the portal. This is a guy that Miami targeted. They had to have. He had 10 sacks last season. I mentioned those 22 combined sacks between Bain and Messidor, and it's not just going to be a Damon Wilson show. There's Marquise Lightfoot. There's a handful of other guys, Armando Blunt, that can get after the quarterback, but he's going to be the guy that's going to be responsible for leading the charge, and I love the way that he plays. There's really nothing flashy to Damon Wilson. He's speed to power and relentless motor, and that's the way he plays. It was a lot of Bain, too, and Bain's got a lot more nuance than that. But what made Bain was a relentless effort, the attention to detail, but really ultimately at the end of the day, even if you knew what was coming, good luck stopping that. So 3 guys there that I wanted to mention, and a couple others. Malachi Toney is all-world, one of the best players in college football, so just there's a lot here. I feel like most of the people listening probably know who Malachi Toney is. If you don't, there's another guy outside of him that I think is going to play huge dividends for Malachi Toney and Darian Mensah. That's Cooper Barkate coming over from Duke, had over 1,000 yards receiving last year. And here's a little side note for the Miami fans out there that should make you feel good. Miami's one of 2 teams in all of college football that has a 3,000-yard passer, 1,000-yard rusher, and in this case, 2 1,000-yard receivers in their lineup. The other one is Ohio State with Julian Saint, Bo Jackson, and Jeremiah Smith. So if you're Miami, tying it into the talent composition, tying it into the explosiveness and the dynamic ability that they play with, Miami's got such a great feel to them in terms of the strength, the power, the playmakers that is littered all over this roster. Now, what I will say, the recipe for success, to me, when I look at those games that they lost last year, I look at the turnover battle. Miami was 11-0 in games that they won the turnover battle. They were 2-3 in games where they were negative, and that happened to be every game that they lost. The Louisville game, the SMU game, the Indiana game. Miami also did a really good job of protecting the football. I think they had 3 fumbles all year. So that's their DNA. They're not going to play with a ton of tempo. They're going to chew up clock. They're a time of possession team. That's what you're going to get with Miami. It all comes back to me. If I have one question mark about this team, it's going to be how do they gel on the offensive line? And by the time they figure it out, what's it going to look like? So Miami, to me, the verdict is in. I have them 10-2, and I have them taking the hard way, but winning the ACC championship, getting a bid to the college football playoff. And I think Miami is, between the schedule, between the talent, between now the coaching pedigree on that staff, they're in a great place, in the best spot in the ACC. So a lot to like about the Miami Hurricanes. Clap it up, everybody. There we go. Miami Hurricanes, ACC. I thought really to myself, is Miami the only team that I talk about here? Is there another team in the ACC that I feel like legitimately I need to pour into and I need to explain to you, the listener, and say, hey, this is another team. And I came up with one, and it's Louisville. Louisville 9-4 last season. Jeff Brom, 3 straight 9-4 seasons. And when you read into Louisville a little bit more, because let me be honest with you, like I was with the Big Ten, it's not like I watch every ACC game. It's not like I watch every Louisville game. I don't do that. So it's a lot of reading up on these guys, filling in the pieces, going back, watching tape. Who's going out? Who's coming in? But Louisville, to me, second most dangerous team in this conference, and the reason why is that running game that we saw last year behind Isaac Brown before he got hurt, and even after they carried it, and that defense under Ron English, who is no longer there anymore. But Louisville looking for their first outright title since 2012. So it's been some time. All right, let's take a look back at Louisville's 2025 season, where the Cardinals started 7-1, including a road victory over number 2 Miami. Miami fans, I know they were just listening. They don't need to hear that. Carson Beck intercepted 4 times in that game. That pushed the Cardinals into the top 15. A lot of buzz around that team. They would then go on to lose the next 3 to Cal, Clemson, SMU, all games which were somewhat winnable before blowing out Kentucky and beating Toledo in the Boca Raton Bowl. So Louisville, one of those teams, a lot of opportunities last year. I think that's a story. When you go back, you're like, man, these guys are really, really close. They won 9 games. It was kind of there for them in the ACC. So let's go and take a look at the 5 prongs of a CFP contender, starting with the Cardinals. Talent, composition. They ranked number 13 in the transfer portal this year. It was a sneaky class, number 2, only behind Miami in the ACC. 34 guys coming in, 12 of which came from the SEC. 2/3 of their 2 deep, more than likely to be coming from the transfer portal. So that's a lot. I mean, this is not a shock. That's the way that Jeff Brom has really kind of put it together during his time at Louisville, but a lot to look forward to. Now, in terms of the experience, 8 starters on offense, including Miller Moss, gone. Chris Bell, Colin Lacey, they're both gone. Over 1,500 combined yards receiving for them last year. A number of other contributors, plus 5 defensive starters on defense. In the trenches, they'll replace 4 out of 5 starters on the offensive line, 3 interior D tackles, front 7, Stanquan Clark, TJ Capers in the middle. They got some guys there. We're going to get into the personnel in a second. Continuity, Brom's always going to be the play caller on that side of the ball. Great continuity with them offensively. Lincoln Keenholz, a little bit different of a guy than he's had at the quarterback position in quite some time. I mentioned Ron English being out. He resigned or stepped down over the offseason, Louisville promoted. They stayed in-house. Cornerback coach Steve Ellis and defensive line coach Mark Ivy to co-DC. So we'll see. Always kind of bring that up. That's always really interesting. It's something that I think is more alluded to internally, just in terms of the industry, in terms of, we talked about Texas A&M, we talked about Oregon. These are teams that have a lot riding on these upcoming seasons, and yet there's unproven play callers. We just don't know how that's going to turn out. In Louisville, which was top 40 in all major categories last year defensively, it was a big part of their success. It wasn't this explosive passing offense that they've been known for. They got to change there. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, some guys with a lot of institutional knowledge. Let's take a look at the schedule. ESPN looks at Louisville's schedule as 60 in their FPI and SP model. And the first 3 weeks, you got 2 top 25 opponents. You got Ole Miss and Nashville, which I think is going to be a little bit more of an anxiety-riddled game for Rebels fans than a lot of people are really kind of giving Louisville credit for nationally. And then you got SMU at home. So we're going to know a lot about this Louisville team, and it's kind of been these peaks and valleys for this team. Like the 7-1 start last year, lose the next 3, finish strong. I want to see this team be consistent because I talked about the opportunities of finishing, and I'll talk more about that in a second. But the 3 names that I really want to dial in on, and I want to communicate to you, the listener, to say, all right, if I'm watching Louisville, who should I know? I mentioned Lincoln Keenholz. Okay, and if you don't know anything about this guy, he was such a fun evaluation out of high school. Played ball in South Dakota, was a 3-sport athlete, a guy that averaged 20 points on the hardwood, hit 472 on the baseball diamond, and also had lower than a 2-run ERA. I mean, he was Mr. Everything in South Dakota. And I know a lot of people's response is going to be, well, it's South Dakota, but Ohio State took him. It was between Washington and Ohio State late in his recruiting process. He loses the battle to Julian Sand, and then Louisville's all in on this guy. They circle him. That's the guy that they want to roll with. And this guy's background is a little bit more different in terms of the RPO run-heavy stuff that he can bring. Now, going back and watching him at Ohio State, I don't know if the mobility as a runner is going to be as accentuated as people think, but the mobility in terms of improvising and being able to create, that's really important as well, because Miller Moss last year, that was not a strength of his game. And because of that, and I'm not saying that's the only reason why, but Louisville, what they're known for, explosive passing offense, they fell 90 spots in downfield passing. That's a big setback for a team that relies on that enough. And you got to give them a lot of credit for adjusting and leaning on the run game. But if they can get back to that standard of what we've seen under Jeff Brom, look out, Lincoln Keenholz, certainly one of the more intriguing players that I'm looking forward to seeing this year. The next guy is Isaac Brown, which I got to study for the 27 NFL draft prep. This guy's lightning in a bottle. I love the way that he plays. From South Florida, he plays big. He averaged almost over 8 yards per carry last year before he got banged up and hurt. But a 2024 freshman All-American, he's got all the juice. Keeping him healthy is huge. And if you do remember, which feels like 10 years ago, but in the portal, this was the guy that Texas was trying to get, along with Jaden Ball. They ended up getting Hollywood Smothers and Raleek Brown, but Isaac Brown certainly would have been one of those guys that they had circled. Kawan Brown, by the way, before we move on to the next guy, Kawan Brown's the other running back in that room. When Isaac Brown was out, this guy averaged over 7 yards per carry. He can roll too. So you got a nice 1-2 punch there in the Cardinals backfield. And then the last guy, Clev Lubin. Just what a story. This guy goes from Coastal Carolina to Louisville, and it's not all sack production with Lubin, even though he had 8.5 sacks last year, but 64 total pressures and almost a 25% win rate, which leads all returning Power 4 starters. So this guy is not the long, tradesy guy that you think of, but you talk about pushing the pocket and constant application of pressure. That is Clev Lubin. And if you look around at Louisville's roster, there are really a lot of pieces to like. I mentioned the backfield and now the new dimension and dynamic with Lincoln Keenholz. You bring over Trey Richardson from Vanderbilt, who had over 800 yards receiving. He's a great story. He started at Washburn College before he went to Vandy, and a guy that was top 10 in YAC in the SEC in his first year. The other guy, LaWayne McCoy, coming from Florida State, a lot of flashes, but a guy that I think can put it together. This Louisville team is super talented, and they got a lot of pieces on both offense and defense. Now, the recipe for success for Jeff Brom's team, this is really kind of the eye-popping stat that I keep going back to. Their first 3 losses, those losses I mentioned, Cal, Clemson, SMU, they came by a combined 7 points. Brom's now, he's got 8 one-score losses in 3 seasons. So this is something he has to remedy for this team. You have to be able to finish. And if Louisville is going to be the next representative out of the ACC, or the ACC is going to have 2 representatives in the college football playoff, and Louisville is going to be one of them, you have to learn how to finish. The other thing I mentioned, the passing game explosiveness, it's going to be interesting with Keenholz, right? What does that look like? But certainly with guys on the perimeter, they got a lot there. And then the defense. Can they get back to the form that they had last year? Top 40 in all major statistical categories. Defense will be big for Louisville. And I kind of like the fact that Jeff Brom had to win different last year. Like I like the fact they had to adjust. The passing game wasn't there, so it was like, all right, we got to be a running team. We got to lean on our defense. That's great. That's great for his development as a head coach, and I know he's been doing it a long time. The things that maybe keep me up at night, we saw this with Miami, and I'm going to say with Louisville. They bring back 3 starters on their offensive line. Their center and their 2 guards. Now, their 2 tackles, guys that played at a high level at the group of 6 level. And that's Anwar O'Neal from Delaware and Cason Henry from South Carolina. Excuse me, I got him mixed up with another guy. But Cason Henry coming over. So these are 2 guys that are going to be put in really big spots for Louisville, and obviously going to have to protect Lincoln Keenholz's blind side, and we'll see how that turns out. The call for me for the Cardinals is 9-3 regular season outside the bubble. I don't think they get in, but this is a team that's got the ammunition that I think can push and will be in the college football playoff conversation deep into the year, and that's going to be a team that we're talking about. The opener in Ole Miss will be massive. I don't think we're talking about it that enough. That game will be in Nashville. I have road games against NC State, Georgia Tech circled, and then on the road against Will Stein's team that I think is going to be very, very much improved. Last game of the regular season in Lexington against Kentucky. We'll see. So there you have it. Miami in, Louisville out, and we were cruising with a little urgency to start the show, and that fires me up. And let me tell you why that fires me up, because it's mailbag time, and we have 3 questions, and I can't wait to get to them. And I told you, H&J Tiger, I told you, I said, hey, hold on. I did the one thing that my assistant Claude told me not to do. He said, Coop, you can't punt questions, man. These guys are interested. They want to hear what you have to say. Don't punt them. I said, Claude, what do I do next? He said, man, answer the question first on the mailbag. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Great question, H&J Tiger. We appreciate you, man. I know who you are. You're from New Orleans, but you live in Houston. You got great kids. Got a great family. I'm fired up for the question. Here we go. Which mid-major quarterback should I know? Who's the next Drew Mestamaker of 2026? All right. Here's what I'm going to tell you. The buzz in terms of like the 1G6 guy that continues to come up is this kid, Brad Jackson, the sophomore at Texas State. 6 foot, 195 pounds, red hair, got a little Andy Dalton in him. Passed for over 3,200 yards this past season, completed 71% of his passes, 21-7 TD to INT. He rushed for over 700 yards, and they won 7 games. I'll tell you this. I watched the kid. I didn't study him. I knew this question was coming up. I went back. I said, all right, let me buzz maybe 25, 30 plays here. He's fun. Quick release, active in the pocket. The mobility probably shows up a little bit more than I thought. When I went back to look at the statistical production on the ground, I was like, whoa, 700 yards. I didn't see that. Will that translate to the next level in terms of the Power 4? I don't know. But this is the kid playing in G.J. Kinney's system. I think a lot of people thought that he wouldn't even be back this year at Texas State. San Marcos. He's back with a massive stat line and a little bit of hype. So I'm fired up for him. So there you have it. Brad Jackson, 6 foot, 195 pounds, scrappy dude. And that's what we like at the G6 level. All right, next question, Ryan from Chicago. He says, Coop, love seeing you pop back up on my feed. Texas beat writers are waxing poetic about Bo Masco, Justin Cryer, Lawrence Seymour. What can Texas fans expect from these guys? Strengths, weaknesses, situations where they're best utilized, and situations they struggle in. Ryan from Chicago, I know you've been listening for quite some time, man. I am not a Texas guy, but hook 'em. I will give you that hook 'em for you. All right, let's talk about these 3 guys. All 3 of these guys coming in the transfer portal for Texas. The expectations for the Longhorns, out of this world. And Texas has such a boom or bust feel to me. I mean, the reports coming out of camp that just kind of cracked me up. Arch, got to play a little tighter, a little bit more polished, a little bit more urgency. Like, damn, man, I really have to be concerned with this guy again? Thought he figured it out over the last 8 games of the season. They got all the talent in the world. All I know is not everything's hunky-dory over there. And I'll just leave it at that. I mean, every program's got their stuff, but they got some stuff. I'll just say that. So let's talk about Bo Masco, that cornerback from Rutgers. 16 games started. Here are a couple words that I just wrote down when I watched him. Technician, well-coached, plays downhill, run support presence, can struggle to maintain phase vertically, very active at the point of attack. Scouted a guy last year, you might have heard of him, Mansour Delane from Virginia Tech. Played a bunch of games, bunch of experience. And I thought to myself, yeah, I can see the appeal. This guy can play a bunch of different spots. He's played at a high level at a Power 4 conference. But the athleticism, the speed, I don't know, but he was well coached. A lot of those same adjectives that I used just now for Bo Masco, I used for Mansour Delane. And I'm going to stop way short of that, as Mansour Delane had a wonderful season and went top 10 to the Kansas City Chiefs. But Bo Masco has the feel of a player that's just like been there, done that. And it's not some like wealth of experience that he has, but he is well coached. He knows how to find the ball. He's active at the point of attack. He's tough. He's dependable, especially in run support. The zone instincts, although he wasn't in zone a ton, at least from what I watched, they showed up. So Bo Masco is one of those guys for Will Muschamp when Muschamp's going to come in and it's a win at all costs type of year. Those are the guys that you're going to gravitate to. So in terms of the NFL projection, there's some pause there. But in terms of coming in and being a dependable source for Will Muschamp in that defense, I certainly think he can fit in that role. The next guy, let's go offense. Let's talk about Lawrence Seymour from Western Kentucky. I believe initially signed with Miami. I think had a stop at Akron. 13-game starter last year, all conference at Western Kentucky. Squatty frame, like 6'2", over 300 pounds. He looks and he feels like a center, but he plays left guard. And I'll tell you this, I watched one game, and it was against LSU. And here's what I thought. Thick lower half, built like a center, quick twitch, reactionary quickness, independent hands. I'll get back to that in a second. Assignment sound, can anchor, sit in the bucket and pass pro, finds extra work. Love his eyes. And what I mean by the eyes are like, I mentioned he looks for work, but this is a guy that picks up on stunts, second level pressures exceptionally well. And for Texas, there's really no issue that he has in terms of the body type. It might sound like it's not prototypical, but in terms of what he's going to be able to give the Longhorns, he's good, man. Like he's a power guy. He can move people. He can get up to the second level. I am kind of curious if NFL teams will try him out at center, but that's not what we're talking about. I think he's going to be really, really solid. And I'll say this, I missed on him in the portal for sure. I mean, there are a handful of guys you just go back, you get more time to kind of focus in on these guys and watch these guys. Lawrence Seymour was one of those guys. Last guy, Justin Crier, 6'1", 238, comes over from Florida State. Don't think he's going to be a three-down guy, a little bit more of a throwback, traditional. Loves to play between the tackles, more of a thumper, flows better laterally than probably how I'm describing, but still a little bit of a vulnerability in pass coverage. So a guy that you can start and you can win with, but you have to be careful of the limitations. So I hope that helps Texas, man. Like, this is it. All in year there. Ryan from Chicago, man. Appreciate you as always. Thank you for leaving a review. Next question is from producer Jesse, my favorite, Josh Pates producer, and a wonderful friend of mine. Guy, last time we played, shot at 84 at the Legacy out in Springfield, Tennessee. Shout out to you, Jess. I was a fan of that. You played well. All right, Jesse says, who's the off-the-radar player you could see not only making a potential impact on this college football season, but also a first-round NFL draft choice next year? I love this question. And to examine this question, I went over the Senior Bowl 300. I went through the Shrine Bowl 1000. And like I said, I probably have watched just about 100 players a month or two ago. Really kind of starting to get background on these guys for the 2027 NFL. I love the draft, guys. I love the draft. It's my favorite. And just being able to connect these guys and seeing the success that they have in the next level or this level or whatever it is, it's awesome. So that being said, let's get into it. One of the earlier names on there, how about this? Nico Iamaleava. I've talked to some scouts on the West Coast that have Nico in that day 2 range. Given the fact that they went 3-9 last year and he started to get a grasp on some things, and now he's got Bob Chesney and there's better skill talent around him, and I know they're fired up about him and some of the guys that they put around him. I don't know if he's going to be a first-round draft pick, but I don't think we're talking about Nico Iamaleava enough. And I'm really excited. And the runner came out versus Penn State, the athleticism. I think the one thing that I was so excited about watching Nico is the game started to slow down. Like, it's so critical for him and these young quarterbacks. Bank reps, bank reps, bank reps. I think Nico started less than 20 games in high school. So that was a big one. and get it, hey, like jive with me here a little bit, right? Like some of these names aren't like, oh, that guy's out of left field. I know that. But maybe they're not completely in your face right now. The next one would be Chris Cole from Georgia. And I think about Chris Cole for a lot of reasons. Led the team in sacks last year with 4. And that's interesting because Chris Cole is an off-ball linebacker primarily. They'll use him somewhat on ball as well. But Georgia only had 20 sacks last season. Not good. I think that was worse in the conference in the SEC. So you think about Georgia, you think about that in room, it's Quintavious Johnson, it's Gabe Harris. It's like, those guys are solid, good run defenders. Who's going to get to the quarterback? I love Chris Cole, man. Love the versatility, love the range. The key and diagnose was a lot better than I thought as well. 2 guys play on the same team. Jordan Faison, we have this hot, warm, cold icon that I use for these players just to kind of describe, all right, how am I feeling? Kind of like water cooler talk. Jordan Faison, the water is boiling. I love this kid. I mean, walks on to Notre Dame's football team after winning the national championship as a lacrosse player, 2-sport guy, now coming into his first season fully as a 1-sport athlete at Notre Dame. I think led them in receiving last year. Silky smooth, dude. Silky smooth. Can play him on the perimeter, can play him out of the slot, probably going to play a lot more slot at the NFL. But I was like, holy smokes. I think Faison, CJ Carr, year 2, a lot of things brewing up there. And then the other one was his teammate on the defensive side of the ball was Boubacar Traore. 7.5 sacks last season. Think of all these edge rushers. Colin Simmons, Dylan Stewart, all the talent in this upcoming class. I mean, you go down the list. Will Helt, Yanze Pierre, Umanmi Elon, who I'm a lot higher on than I think the draft consensus. Boubacar Traore was one of my top 5 highest graded players. And I think what I got back was a lot of late day 2 on him. I loved him, man. I loved the tape against Mawanoa. I thought he was smooth. I thought he was strong. I thought he's got exceptional bend. He's got a game plan. There's counters, secondary moves. Like, now he's got Charlie Partridge. Yeah. Hell yeah. Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. Boubacar Traore. And the next guy, you want to go off the wall, Jess? Let's go off the wall. Ricky Gibson, Texas A&M, missed all of last season with the shoulder injury at Tennessee. Long, reactionary. When I watched his tape, I ranked him the number 1 corner in the portal for a reason. I like him. I have not read any reports about him preseason, so I may look like an idiot. That is very well possible. But Ricky Gibson would be another name. So you asked for 1. I gave you 5. Classic Coop. Coop right there just did not listen to my old producer, but love you very much. Thank you for the questions. And a very good mailbag. Guys, if you want your mailbag question answered, make sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And you can ask a question on X as well to get your questions answered. All right, we're rolling. We're done with the ACC. Hey, last thing on the ACC real quick before we move on to the Big 12. I like Cal. Just gonna say that. I like Cal. Okay? All right. The Big 12. Let's talk about the Big 12. You can't talk about the Big 12 without talking about the big money. Money, money, money. That is Texas Tech. What, 9 guys drafted last year? Damn, man. One of the best season in program history. David Bailey, Captain America, Jacob Rodriguez, Lee Hunter, Skylar Gill Howard. Tech's got it, man. They reload, another top 10 ranked transfer portal class, and they're the favorites to repeat as Big 12 champions and return to the college football playoffs. Let's set the table. Red Raiders signed the number 2 transfer class in 2025. 13 4-stars. That's more than the rest of the Big 12 combined. Feels a little bit like Miami in the ACC, right? Hang with me. All right, started the season 6-0. Great win over number 14 Utah on the road, Salt Lake City. Let me tell you, that is a hard place to win. They got a formula there. They went up there. They took care of business. Front 7. All 7 defenders on Texas Tech's front 7. All conference honors. Damn. Red Raiders 11 regular season games by an average of 20-plus points. Won 11 regular season games by an average of 20-plus points. One of 3 teams to do that in the college football playoff era. 2018, Alabama. 2019, Ohio State. 2025, Texas Tech. I mean, what a year for those guys. First outright conference title in 70 years. They would then go on to lose to Oregon 23-0 in their playoff debut. So a little bit of a lot more sweetness than bitterness, but a little bittersweet. You know, the way the season ended. Then the Brendan Sorsby stuff feels like it's long ago. The college football news cycle is like a political news cycle. Like it's whatever felt big 48 hours ago might as well have been 10 years ago. And the Brendan Sorsby stuff, it's like, you know, Tech being like public enemy number 1, and I don't care. I don't care. Like, you know, he's off to the NFL. He got suspended for a year. It is what it is. Will Hammond's got to step up. All right, let's get into Coop's 5 prongs of a college football playoff contender. Talent composition. Nobody's been doing this better in the Big 12, and quite honestly, maybe in the country, than James Blanchard and his crew down in Lubbock. And I mentioned back-to-back top 10 ranked transfer portal classes. Also, this one kind of goes under the radar a little bit, a top 15 ranked high school class where they signed the second highest rated player in program history with edge and pass rusher LaDainian Guyton. Probably would have been a lot higher, but he reclassified from 2027 to 2026. They think the world of this kid. If you like David Bailey, this kid's got a lot of the same goods. I know that's saying a lot, but keep an eye on LaDainian Guyton. From an experience standpoint, here's Tech's biggest battle. They lose 9 starters from last year. All 9 of those guys got drafted. They're in the NFL. That's a program high. So A+ there, but that just shows you how robust the talent was for Texas Tech and how good of a job they did really kind of flipping over that roster. Now in the trenches is where it gets tough. The front 7 definitely took the biggest hit. 5 out of the 6 players drafted were from the front 7 on the defensive side of the football. That includes David Bailey, number 2 pick in the draft, and Jacob Rodriguez, who was drafted in the 2nd round by the Miami Dolphins. Jacob Rodriguez, I called Captain America a little bit earlier in the show. There is no replacing him in terms of what he did. His stat line was absolutely insane. If you watched him, one of the most enjoyable players to watch in college football, finished 5th in the Heisman Trophy running. We're talking about a linebacker here, right? So Shieldwood, the defensive coordinator, is going to have his hands full, but they have talent. They return 3 starters on the offensive line, including Carter Sheridan, Howard Sampson, Jacob Ponton, and 2 more and 2 more starters they'll have to plug in there with the transfer from Louisville coming over in Jordan Church, and Hunter Zambrano has been a little bit banged up, but he'll start at one of those guard spots. Continuity, I keep talking about it. Mac Leftwich, I think one of the best young offensive coordinators in the game. Tough playoff outing against Oregon, but they'll learn from that. You think about the rushing attack that they had last year. Quentin Joyner coming back this year to join the likes of Dickey. I mean, like, that's lethal right there. That's the type of depth that championship teams have. And then on the opposite side, Shieldwood, arguably the best unit in college football last year. I talked about the big uglies, Lee Hunter, Skylar Gill-Howard, who was banged up, but David Bailey, Jacob Rodriguez, those guys were a force to be reckoned with, not to mention the back end. Guys like Bryce Pollock, I love. If you don't know that name, especially if you're an NFL draft guy, go study him. I think one of the best young cornerbacks in the country. The other part of this for Texas Tech, where I think you have to like it if you're a Red Raiders fan, and the other part why I think so many in the media are high on them and why they kind of feel inevitable to go back to the college football playoffs, the schedule. The easiest strength of schedule in the Power 4, according to ESPN. No BYU, no Utah. Your top 4 toughest teams, they all come to Lubbock. That's Houston, early, Arizona State, Arizona, and TCU. And I still can't shake this feeling like there's going to be a couple hiccups there. I'll talk about that in a second. But 3 names you need to know when you're watching Texas Tech on a Saturday, and there are a lot more than that. But I'm going to translate as much as I can to try to educate you on saying, all right, Texas Tech football comes down to these 3 players in 2026. Will Hammond, the quarterback, And this guy played well, man, in spot duty last year with Baron Morton going down, especially in that Utah game. Led 4 scoring drives against Utah in Salt Lake City. Threw for over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns. He's in the last phases of recovering from a torn ACL that he recovered late in October against Oklahoma State. There's been some rumors about Tommy Castellanos from Florida State being connected with Texas Tech. All I can tell you about that is I think that is a very smart play as an insurance policy. If Will Hammond's not ready to go, Lloyd Jones is behind him. There is not a lot of experience there. We had this conversation back in 2020, I believe. I think my last year in college football, maybe 2019. I could be wrong. With Mario Cristobal, I remember Tyler Shuck was a young guy that we liked, redshirt freshman. We felt like we had a college football playoff team, but we liked the quarterback, but we weren't there yet. And if something were to happen to him, whether it was lack of high-level play or it was an injury, we wanted to make sure that we ended up having an insurance policy. That guy ended up being Anthony Brown, and it was the best decision that we ever made. Went to the Fiesta Bowl that year, and Iowa State took it to us. All right, the next guy, defensive line, Mateen Ibiroba from Wake Forest, the number 1 defensive lineman in the transfer portal. Really cool story. Started his career at Georgetown. He's put on a lot of weight. I think he went to college at like 230. He's over 300 pounds now. This guy, from an interior pass rush presence, one of the best in the country, especially passing down situations. I think he had like a 23% win rate. But you can do a lot of different things with him, and I think will do a lot of things with him just in terms of where you can line him up, can put him on the edge, can put him as 3 tech over the center as well. A lot of flexibility there, and a really good player that's an ascending player that I expect to be a name that NFL circles will start to draw in on as the season goes along. Jacob Rodriguez, I mentioned Captain America. How do you replace Captain America? You can't. They tried to. In the Marvel series, they tried to. They got Kurt Russell's son to try to do it. He couldn't do it. And maybe that's what they're doing here. And that's really not, I don't know, I'm not trying to be mean here, but Austin Romaine is a dude, and they bring him over from Kansas State. He was hard to keep off the field as a freshman at Kansas State. He ends up playing a lot of games for them, 34 starts during his time there in the Little Apple, 2-time All Big 12. This guy's all over the place. Took me a little bit of a while to warm up to him in the transfer portal scouting process, but a lot of fun. And I like Austin Romaine, and trust me, in terms of the Big 12 familiarity there, obviously James Blanchard has a really good feel for Austin Romaine. So there you have it. Will Hammond, Mateen Ibiroba. Work on that last name. I've been working on it hard. And then Austin Romaine. And I mentioned Bryce Pollock, certainly another guy that you need to know. All right. The recipe for success for Texas Tech, meat and potatoes. That's what I have put down. Elite defense, which it's easier said than done. I know you're losing a lot. 6 guys drafted to the NFL, but they've done a good job replacing. The running efficiency and protecting the football. I think they were plus 14 turnover differential, and they were elite 3rd down conversion on offense percentage, just in terms of 49%. So you think about all those ingredients in terms of protecting the ball, getting the ball back, running the ball effectively, and then being able to execute on 3rd down. I mean, what team wouldn't want that? That's why Texas Tech had the season that they had last year. All right, position-specific thing for me. Will Hammond, what's it going to look like? What's it going to look like, especially early? Houston comes to town. That's going to be a test, man. Like, we don't talk about Houston enough. I'm not going to get too extensively into the Big 12, but I like Houston. And Houston's a team to watch out for, especially with the veteran quarterback, the way they scout. That's going to be a little bit more of a testy game than I think people expect. So, Will Hammond, ACL, schedule is lenient, lots to replace. I've talked about that. I think they should be fine. What does fine look like? I actually have Texas Tech at 10-2, but getting into the CFP via the Big 12 championship. And I think the competitive depth of this conference is a lot better than it's giving credit for, and it's gotten better. I mentioned Houston week 3. Last 3 games of this season, just give me a little bit of pause, okay? At Oklahoma State, who's going to be vastly improved. At Baylor, DJ Lagway and Waco. It could work, it could not work. And then TCU at home. Big target on their back, maybe it's been watered down a little bit, but Texas Tech, I still think the cream of the crop in the Big 12. So there you have it, 10-2. They're getting the playoffs. Only one team left, which means I have a reminder. Guys, you're locked into Coop's Corner. You can find us every Monday at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. And if you have a question, like you had heard with our 3 questions from our great viewers during the mailbag section, make sure to leave a comment in a review. That is the place to do it. 5 stars. I love it. I think we're at a perfect 5 right now. Let's keep it up. All right, the next team in the Big 12, team that I'm low-key very fired up about. Bear Bachmeier, BYU. Kalani Sitake, 23-4 in the last 2 years. This team's starting to figure it out, especially when you talk about a team that just joined the Power 4 conference like yesterday. Captured 12 wins for just the 5th time after losing to Texas Tech twice, once in the regular season and once in the Big 12 championship. Bear Bachmeier threw for over 3,000 yards, rushed for another 500, ranked top 5 in the Big 12 in completion rate. And guess what? Guy was a transfer that came in late from Stanford after Troy Taylor got fired. Now he's got a full offseason, full spring, full fall. And he did that. He went for 3,000, rushed for another 500, beat Utah. Hey, got their guy, man. And Ryder Lyons coming in as a 5-star at BYU, making things happen. All right, so let's get into it. Coop's 5 prongs of a college football playoff contender. BYU, from a talent composition standpoint, always super interesting. Development. A lot of these guys go on 1 to 2 year missions. That strength conditioning program is vital. But how about this? Top 25 ranked recruiting class, number 2 in the Big 12, only behind Texas Tech. Pretty good. Different era of college football we're living in. Kalani Sitake getting it done. All right, from an experience standpoint, they return 10 players. 17 of them last year had some type of all Big 12 honors. 10 of them are coming back. That includes the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year in bell cow, LJ Martin, who rushed for over 1,300 yards. 6 Big 12 defenders are back on defense. And they add the number 1 linebacker in the transfer portal cycle with Cade Ulaave from Cal. And if you have not seen him, he's one of those guys where the day's winding down, you've been drinking a little bit, you've been watching all your teams and the SEC and the ACC, and you got BYU versus Arizona State at 9:30, and your wife is telling you to go to bed. And then you see this psycho running around the football field for the first couple drives of the game. Might be an all-nighter, babe. Dude can roll. All right, in the trenches, 3 new starters on the OL. But they got some vet experience. They got 5 redshirt seniors in the 2 deep. They lose a couple veteran starters on the interior defensive line, but they got some experience coming back as well. Continuity, Jay Hill gone. Following Kyle Whittingham to Michigan, the defensive coordinator, Brady Papenga in. For the nostalgic crowd out there, Brady Papenga. How about that? Hadn't heard that in a while. And then you think about the schedule. 55th toughest. Ranked 9th out of 16 teams in the Big 12, Notre Dame at home. And that is middle of October. I'm telling you right now, looking at both those teams' schedule, would not be shocked if game day is heading to Provo and both those teams are undefeated. I've played in Provo before, once at Cincinnati, once at Washington, different crowd, breathtaking views. Hard place to win. Grass is a little bit thicker. Air is a little bit crisper. Different environment. And Notre Dame's been in a lot of different environments, but that game, I'm telling you right now, I got it circled. All right, 3 names for you to know for the BYU Cougars. Bear Bachmeier, gassed him up. Great name. Represents it well. Bear is a bear. Really good player. Gamer. Has been that way since high school. Greg Biggins, if you're listening, shout out to you. He's always been a huge Bear Bachmeier fan. LJ Martin, the other guy. Big back, north-south, 1,300 yards. Dynamic. That's what they're going to lean on. A little bit banged up, had a shoulder injury. Need him healthy. But the complementary backfield between Bachmeier and Martin is going to be huge. And then Cade Ulaave. I mean, Bobby Boucher. Love the guy. He's awesome. All right, I just talked about him. The next guy you need to know about, safety, Faletau Satuala. guy that's getting some NFL buzz, and there's some legit dudes on this BYU defense, and he's one of them. All right, recipe for success for BYU. I talked about Bachmeier and Martin on the ground. That's it. Ride the bull. Defensive carryover. What's it going to look like from Hill to Papenga? You got a lot of vets back. You got the number one backer in the portal. That unit, I do not want to see any drop-off. That's going to be huge. And then here's my last thing. Take care of Notre Dame at home, and you actually got a little bit of leverage. And you're more than likely still going to have to go through Texas Tech. But if you beat Notre Dame, go to the Big 12, drop to Texas Tech, there's still a chance you got an at-large opportunity there. And this is kind of where I think like the credibility of what you did last year kind of seeps in. Like this is a consistent program on the rise, elevated 23-4 in the last 2 years. That's where I think, especially with some of the people making the decisions, I'm just telling you, I think it matters. I got BYU 10-2 and out. Man, that was quick, huh? I mean, just pumping them up, 10-2 and out. That's kind of where I think it is. And I will tell you, this decision was the hardest one I had to make. I really kind of I really kind of resonate more with where BYU is in terms of their experience, their age, their trajectory right now. I think the one thing that maybe lingers in my head a little bit is that stat about Texas Tech just wiping the floor with everybody in the conference. And that to me, when you got the coordinator coming back on both sides of the ball, you got a lot of talent coming in, still means something. So there you have it. The ACC, the Big 12, we talked Miami, we talked Louisville, we talked Texas Tech, and we talked BYU. And before we get out of here, I want to address one more thing. Daquan Wright, the former tight end from Ole Miss, undrafted by the Philadelphia Eagles, picked up by the Cleveland Browns, played in a NFL preseason game Saturday. As of today, he has been released by the Cleveland Browns. He will have to clear the waiver wire. But as of right now, he has an agreement with LSU to play in Baton Rouge, and we don't even know if that's allowed because we don't even know if the SEC allows interconference transfer rules, but we don't know if he's an Ole Miss player or an NFL player. And if you've been hiding under a rock, he was granted another year of eligibility in a TRO case that was granted to him in the great state of Louisiana, along with 15 other players. I'm not going to get into the litigation stuff. I hate that stuff. That's where we are in college football. I'll give you two takes. One, a lot of people ask are like, are you surprised that Lane Kiffin's involved? No, I'm not surprised. Lane Kiffin was paid and asked to come to LSU to win and to win big. If there is any gray area in the world of college athletics where he can upgrade his roster, that's his job to do that. You might not agree with it. Hell, you might even think it's unethical. But his job, and my old job, was to look for any advantage that the rule book would allow you. He is doing that. Now, what I can also tell you is he's probably changing the game for the better. And I'm not trying to sell you something. Like I get why a lot of people don't like this. I don't like it. Like as soon as you wear an NFL jersey, you shouldn't be able to come back to college football. But we live in some crazy ass world that's okay. Lane Kiffin saying, as long as it's okay, I'm going to do it. And that's what he's doing. And because of his actions, that's going to force change in college football. It's probably going to force change in the NFL. He's already spent close to $50 million on his team. He felt like, okay, I've been through spring, I've been through fall. Like, I'd love a third edge. What happens if Lamar Brown goes down? The kid's actually a D tackle and he's playing out in edge for us. I would love a Junior Tuihalamaka. I would love a Jack Pyburn. What happens if Trades Green gets hurt? I got Malachi Thomas. No, I love Daquan Wright. I can plug him in. Guy was second team all SEC. Had over 600 yards receiving. Like that's his job. So you may not like it, but that's his job. So LSU to me, man, they're fascinating. I hope they got some cameras in that facility this year, because I mean that would be like unbelievable Hard Knocks type of stuff. But guys, I will end it on that, and I appreciate you as always. Like I said, Coop's Corner, you can find us every Monday, 7 o'clock Eastern on YouTube, on X, wherever you find your podcast as well. Make sure to ask a question, leave a review. That is the place to do it, guys. I hope you have a fantastic week. This is it. We're in it. College football is here. Dublin, Ireland, North Carolina, TCU. Doesn't get any better than that. All right, guys. Have a great rest of your week. Talk to you soon.